Beyonce's got nothing on her.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Leslie. Great. You know, we're already 5 minutes in, so anyone else can join us as we start. Give me a second to share my screen. Sharing an entire screen. All right. I would ask the usual question. Can everybody see my screen? If you can see it, just
Yes, you can.
great. Thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. Oh, I stopped sharing. Okay. Let's do that again. And I'm back to sharing. There we go. All right. So yesterday's class was we ended our class yesterday on this image diagram chart, something like that. And the question was, which one are you? So we'll go back to this and we're going to go around and then we're going to answer this question of which one are you? So based off yesterday's class and maybe the internal, what was it going to be like? Meditation that happened, you know. Where do you think you're leaning towards? I know Onyeka gave us some insight yesterday. So we're still on leaning towards UI design, right?
Yes.
Okay. For the rest of us, where are we leaning towards? I mean, you're doing product design, but where do you think you'd lean towards? Would you lean towards UI design or UX research or UX design? Where do you think you're at on this scale and spectrum of responsibilities and day-to-day activities?
I would say UX design for me. Definitely UX design.
Okay. Do you want to tell us why you're going with UX design?
Okay, so since product design, yeah, encompasses like the whole thing, but I love the designing. Like I want to do the actual thing. It's not just about asking questions and trying to understand how people are thinking. I want to do like the real thing, you know.
The real thing is
Like
UI design, right?
Let me see.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
UI
well,
design.
yeah, UI is the physical stuff that you see, but the whole like prototyping, wireframing, sketches, mapping, user flow, everything. Like like it's sweet to do. Like especially when you're using whiteboard to be doing it.
Okay.
It's sweet.
So you want to go through the process before getting
like the
to
practical.
the
Yeah.
design. All right. I see. Okay. Who else?
I think I'll go next.
Okay.
Everyone.
Hi, Tyler.
Yeah. So for me, I think I would like the product design. The product. I would like to be a product designer because it has to do with the whole aspect of beginning from the research part, like figuring a problem, and you make research on how to solve the problem and get to arrive at a solution and be able to deliver the final product.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, who's next? Should I call names?
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, for me, yeah, I think I'll choose the both because I enjoy designing. So I'll be going for the UX design, and for the UX research, I enjoy user testing and understanding like the competitive analysis, like probably like the your competitors when you want to build the products and all that. Get so I think both for me.
So that would be UX design slash research or product design where you get to do everything.
Product design where I'll do everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, who's next?
Sorry, Evie. I just to be clear, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Just to be clear, like the question is between UX design, UX research, and then products, right?
I added UI design to this one.
Oh,
So
you added UI design
UX
to this
product
one.
design or just UI design. So basically, I mean, in this course, we're teaching you everything, but where do you think you lean towards? You know, like I said, you have to have one strong area and then say, oh, this is other stuff that I want to do or not, right? Or you want to
Okay.
be generalist. So yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, so I definitely would like one product design because I mean it's all encompassing. But yeah, UI design will probably be what I'm more interested in because maybe that's the one that has to do with designing,
Mhm.
you know, like all that those apps you see. I don't know, they're always just really sweet to see them when you see those I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to see there.
No, you're
They're like
definitely a UI person.
yeah, so you see designs of like apps and maybe not websites, but those things, and maybe food blogs or something. Just it was just so colorful and fine. So yeah.
You're definitely a UI person. I mean, I would look at all those things and I'd be like, ah, this UX is so nice. I mean, look at how easy this thing is. Look at what you're like, UI is sweet. So yes, that's how you know like you're more of a UI person than a UX person. And again,
Okay.
it's just about knowing what you enjoy and what your core is, and then being aware of everything else. So it's not this is better than this kind of situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right then. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, who's going next? Grace, Udar, Treasure. Get you guys going to type in chats. I see your response. Who is going next out of the three of y'all? If you can't talk, please type in the chat so that I know to move forward. Otherwise, okay, yes. So please type in the chat so I know that we're moving forward and you can hear me. I feel like this is a good time to remind you all that I am welcoming this silence because somebody does have to answer me before we go ahead. So we're not wasting too much time. Let me know if you're going to respond in the chats or if you're going to unmute and move forward. But I do require engagement. So the question is, based on our class yesterday, which one are you? And this is to remind you of some of the things we talked about. Are you a UX designer, UX researcher? You want to do product design where you're doing everything, or UI design? You know.
I don't get that. What exactly the question?
Which one are you? So yesterday we talked about these different roles, right? And I'm asking us, where do you think you're leaning towards? Which is your strength? Which is more interesting for you? Is it UX design? Is it UX research? Is it product design? Or is it just UI design where you're more interested and fascinated by how the design, how the application looks generally? So we're doing some evaluation here. Yep, just so you're aware.
I think I'm more of UX design and UX research. So
Okay.
like typically like doing research to find out things first, and I also like design as well. So I think UX design and research. Does that make sense?
Okay, at least there's one research person. Yay. Okay, so Grace says she likes UI design because she likes working more with colors. Okay. 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 Is that everybody? I feel like there's one more person that hasn't spoken yet. Treasure. Both as in UX research and UX design, or both combined as in product design? Treasure, that question is for you because you wrote both combined, so product design then. Okay. Cool. All right. So the essence of having to do this is so you're just aware, even though we're taking you through the entire process, eventually being able to specialize and be known for a particular area trumps being like a generalist, especially if you're looking to work in bigger companies, because then you can really hone in on your skills in that particular area. So today we know what UX is, we know what UX research is, and we understand kind of why we're doing this research thing, right? But today we're going to be talking about how exactly do we do it, right? So we know why, we know what, and I'm talking about how. So again, we're going to start with how. Can somebody give me an insight into say, well, how exactly do we go around creating good user experiences for our website, for our mobile apps, for even physical products that we use? Does anybody have any insight or want to contribute to that? I feel like I'm going to bring music in next class so that when we're having this break, we can be listening to some cool jams in the midst of it. You know, today I'll be your musician, giving you live updates and stuff.
Well, sorry. To begin to start with, I think you first need to like identify what the problem is, and then carry out research. That's for already like products that are already available. So like you find what the problem is, where the people are having issues based on carry out research, talk to the people, and yeah. So whatever response they give makes you, then you have to based on the response, you work on that to make a better UX user experience. I think.
All right. This is one way to get started in creating a good UX. Does anybody else have another opinion on how we can get started when it comes to creating a good user experience?
So to start, I think I would say define the problem
Okay.
and actually solve it.
I'm actually going to quote you on this because what you are doing right now is Ojuro.
Is what?
Is Ojuro.
How?
You said define the problem and actually solve it. Yeah, but like, how are we going to go ahead? Is what we're asking you, and you're telling us we will define it. This is an Ojuro something. I'm going to make this because see, there are Algerian people in our midst, people that
Wow.
yes.
Wow.
Yes. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else? No? Okay.
Okay, ma.
Yeah. All right. Tell us.
Oh, thank you. I don't know, but in my opinion, I would say for you to create a good UX, I think you should do a research on those that are gone ahead of you to see their faults, see their strength, and I don't know, I'm just saying, and know what to bring in and know what not to bring in. Just my own idea.
One second. I'm just trying to. Just because it said in your opinion, so that we're keeping that at the forefront. So in your opinion, to create good UX, we have to do research on our competitors to know their strengths, weaknesses, and decide what to build. Right? This is what you said. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anybody else before we go forward? There are no wrong answers. I mean, this is an introductory class, so there is no wrong answer here. They're just different perspectives.
Apart from my own, that you give it paper color called Ojoro. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. No problem.
How exactly do we do something? Are you giving us? See, someone says we start by identifying or carrying out research. We analyze it. Another person said we can look at computer. You just said we define the problem and solve it. So yes, but the thing is, I didn't add your name. So like, maybe they will work with you. Maybe they will not. I will, and it's recorded. So okay, all right. Those are all good and correct and accurate answers to certain degrees. However, the good thing about design is that it's not abstract, and there are methods and processes to follow through when we're talking about defining the problem and actually solving it. We have some responses that says you should carry out research, or conduct what we'll call a competitor analysis. And those are also ways, but there are overarching methods that exist. So the UX design process is, how teams create products that are meaningful and relevant, which is very similar to this answer, like how they define problem and the rest of it, right? Then there is design thinking, which ideally all of these things are similar. The reason why Lean UX is highlighted here is it is a practice that was brought out of the entire design process. And the essence of this is just finding a way to do it faster, to do research faster and in a way that is more impactful. So that's the major difference with Lean UX right here. Design sprint is the UX design process or design thinking process over a period of time, and which is usually 5 days. So we're literally going through the phase of you want to empathize with your users. And I know Leslie has talked about this before in his introductory class. So when you're empathizing, when you're defining, when you're ideating, so you have a day defined to all of these activities. And the essence of that is you have 5 days to come up with something tangible that we can go and test in the market. So instead of maybe spreading out this process over weeks or over months, we do design sprints. But as with every process, there is a pro and there is a con of doing it. Double diamond, again, is just a visual representation of the design process, right? So it's a simple way to explain like the steps exactly. So where you're starting, what you're supposed to be doing at this stage, and all the way. So I have the images actually to show what this is, and I'm not sure how. Is this, can you see this clearly? Yeah, I'm gonna do like I did yesterday and ruin the size of these things by just zooming in so we can see. So I mean, the one thing you will start to notice is that everything is similar, right? If we're doing, bring to the front, please. Okay, not a green. Right. All right. So it starts with, you know, you define what your problem is, you do some research to find out whether or not the problem you define is actually accurate, you analyze the result, the results of that research, you design an interface, and then you validate this. So you can validate this by well, ideally it would be testing a prototype with users. Whatever that prototype is depends on how you carried out this exact process. For some companies, it's defining what that MVP in a lean UX process, right? And so the thing with lean UX though is that you should have a product that is out in the market and users are interacting with, and that's how you learn. So it's not, oh, let's spend 2 weeks doing user interviews or doing all of these rigorous research activities and then do design and test design and whatnot. So lean UX is like you have some insights into a problem that exists. Maybe talk to 1 or 2 users or do that within a short period of time. But the key thing is you're releasing a product that is out in the market and users are interacting with, and that's how you learn and you make updates. As soon as you figure out, oh, this is probably not working for the users, you make updates to that. Again, design sprints is also similar. 5 days to do all of these activities.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yep.
So these are like theories for UX design. Like you don't have to use everything. You can just pick one, right?
Yes.
So every designer knows that there are about 5 of them, and
Yes.
then they can decide to pick, say, design sprint or.
Yes.
But to
So
me, they all seem alike. Like it's just English nomenclature. I don't know.
yeah, that's what I said. The major difference here, or the major difference here, or the major methods that is actually would be design sprint, the double diamond, and lean UX. Design thinking and design process is just is literally the same thing, right? The difference is the terms or what they call it. So design thinking is supposed to be like a mindset, right?
Okay.
How you should think through your process, and then design process is materializing that mindset. So, but the things that are actual methods will be this double diamond, lean UX, design sprint, and they would depend on the kind of project you're working on or the kind of company that you're working with. Sometimes companies go through all of this. Sometimes there are, in fact, I've actually never worked on a project where we had to do design sprints. I have attended design sprint workshops, right? But I have never actually, okay, maybe once, and that's because we were working with a third-party client and we needed to clarify some things for them. So we walked them through a design sprint. But aside from that, that's like in 5 years, I've only done design sprints once on a project. Aside from that, it's like workshops that I attended where we're learning about what should happen during a design sprint, right? But there are organizations that would occasionally say, you know what, we need to get work done fast and we need to understand this this problem or this scenario that we're facing fast. So let's do a sprint, right? Where we can just gather in the room. So usually it should be, well, traditionally before remote work came, it is everybody gather in a room and then we're going through. So day one, in day one, sometimes we have a subject matter expert. And that would take the place of secondary research. So ideally, to understand more about the problem space, you're probably Googling and reading other articles and literature reviews or hearing stuff that reviewing customer complaints and stuff like that. But on day one of design sprints, what usually happens is we have industry experts coming to tell us about the space, right? So they're the ones who's giving us information that we're going to use going forward. So we can ask them the questions that we need. Sometimes we have people from customer support who will tell us, well, these are some of the things that users have complained about. Sometimes we have business people sharing their ideas around, what the business is trying to achieve. So we're creating a detailed solution. So in that first day, we're understanding context. We're talking about the competitors. We're figuring out our strategy. Anyway, the essence of that is to to do that first part where we're doing generative research and we're understanding the market. And then on the second day or second step, sometimes people they collapse the sprint from 5 days to 3 days, which means that maybe the morning of day one is where we do the understand phase. But what's key about design sprint is that it actually follows this order, right? So you start with understanding, and then everybody goes away, say, all right, we've heard about this, start giving us solutions. Some of the activities you do here is crazy eights. So crazy eights is, if you're in a physical space, everybody gets a sticky. You get 8 stickies, and in 1 minute, you are brainstorming ideas on 8 stickies. So 1 idea per sticky or post-it notes, right? And the essence of 1 minute is don't think too much. It's not that serious. There are no stupid ideas. Just download whatever it is in your brain that you're thinking about as soon as you've heard of all of these things about our customers and what their needs are and stuff like that, right? And then there is now the decide phase where everybody now comes together and say, okay, we are reviewing all of these ideas to understand which should we go with first or which makes more sense. And then after that phase, we now start building out a prototype. So sometimes this prototype is a physical product. Sometimes it's just drawing on a paper that you can test with users. Sometimes it is a wireframe. Whatever a prototype is depends on what you're aiming to get. And then you validate with users. So you get a couple users into a room or remotely, and you validate with users to say, all right, this thing that we've spent the past few hours, past few days on, how does that look like for our users, right? So the thing with design sprint is it happens within a certain time frame, and the steps happen exactly the way it is written. So from step 1 to step 5, right? So design sprint is probably the only process that does this, that takes the design process and literally follows it the way it does. If you look at design thinking over here, it does not do that. There is a lot of so there is empathy. Sometimes you can start with empathy for our users. Sorry, I cannot read your message right now, but I will get to it. Sometimes you start with the empathize phase, and then you define, and then maybe you ideate, you prototype, you test, and then from testing, you go back and change your idea, ideate, or from testing, you go back to empathize to say, oops, we found the information about the user, so what we did the first time wasn't correct. Or from testing, you go back to say, yeah, maybe we did not frame this question correctly, we have to redefine what that looks like. Or maybe you ideate, you prototype, you go back and say, or maybe we should go in this different direction, right? So it doesn't happen in it's not so much a linear part where you're doing empathize, define. Sometimes you empathize, you define. Well, I guess the first few steps is literally all of this combined at once. But from testing, when you've gotten a product out there, sometimes the insights you get makes you change how you're doing the product, and you re-prototype again. Sometimes it makes you change exactly what you thought the problem was. Sometimes it just makes you redefine what you thought the problem was, or who you thought were being affected by the problem, right? So it's not a linear process as it shows in design sprint. So you can also be doing all of this at the same time. Like, you don't have to wait one whole day to define everything first. You can you can empathize, do prototype and test, right? Which is kind of what Lean UX does. So it collapses all of this process together into 3. Hold on, I think someone's trying to join the class. Okay. All right, I'm just saying some of the messages in the chat because I have 2 screens in front of me. All right, so that's what Lean UX tries to do, right? They say you think, which is ideally, maybe you have an idea for something you think might make the process easier for users. As soon as you're thinking about it, you're creating your prototype, right? As soon as you're creating your prototype, you're launching it out. into the market for users to use, or you have a dedicated user base where that tests your product, and then from there you go back to rethink to say, yeah, maybe that wasn't right. Oh, this is another thing that we can try out and do that. So that's essentially collapsing all of the other processes to say, oh, we will first define it after we figured it out. And let's have plenty different variations or plenty different ideas before we decide to do prototype. Now it's like, I feel like this is something that we can do to improve the process. All right, create a prototype and test it, right? So you're getting your feedback from users directly rather than the entire team sharing ideas and giving ourselves stuff when you can be out there talking to users directly. So again, depending on the company, you're following this process or not, right? So the essence of this was we needed to move faster in the design process, and as you can see, sometimes it's like a bit longer. And if you see in the, let me see, send you the back. Okay, looks like we have a right number here. That's not. All right, so for the double diamond, also similar. Let me just drag this all the way back so we can actually see what's below. Okay, yep. So it actually just says what it is here, right? So you start with, this is the initial problem that we figured out that we want to work on. So everybody goes away differently and says, let's think about more about what, so let's do that individually, similar to design sprints, except this doesn't have to take place over a time box number of hours or minutes or days, or all of this could be done in one day. You know, so the major difference is that design sprints will and should ideally take a couple of days, from 3 to 5. This design thinking, this double diamond process might be a process that the company adopts to say, before we ship out a product, we have to do all of these things. So we start by saying, oh, we found this product, this problem. Everybody go and think about what it is, come back the next day and say, all right, this is what all of us has found out, and we're defining it. So the major difference is it just tells us at what point do people work on things individually, at what point do we come together to figure things out as a group, which is the major difference here, right? So on the discover phase, everybody does that individually. We come together to define which problem will have the most impact. Everybody goes back again, consider all the options, which is kind of like the ideation phase, and then you are developing a prototype at this point, right? Yeah, and then deliver is you come back again together and you, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you come back again together, and then okay, no, at the deliver is where you're working on the project. Yeah. You come back together to do your prototype at this point, and then again, this could be, well, in this essence, it is actually, so when we say ship, we're talking about like an actual product. So this is not like a Figma prototype that we're clicking, right? So at this phase, it is an actual process. So now to call out another difference between design thinking double diamond and the sprint is that the sprint, sometimes one will say your prototype is anything, and is usually low fidelity, something that users can easily test. But here in the double diamond process, we're telling you that your product at the end of this process is something that users will use and interact with. So while Lean UX is making this process, is collapsing this process into 3, you are going through all of this to be able to get the products that you test with your users. So that's essentially, these are like some of the ways we can start thinking about our process when we want to create a good UX. Again, depends on the organization you're working with, or the client, or the product that you're working with. Sometimes there is a mix of all of this. What's going to be constant is design thinking process, and obviously the UX design process. So whichever any of this actually happens, it depends, right? And also what this looks like in practice also depends. It is more design thinking where we're doing things without necessarily saying, oh, let everybody come together and do this at this point. Now, sometimes everybody's coming together to define the problem, right? We're not diverging. Sometimes we're all coming together to define the problem. Sometimes we're coming together, or we're all going in different ways to say, let's define it differently for what it looks like. So the design thinking process, which is why this is a mindset. So this is what you keep in mind, that what you're trying to do, Sha, is you're trying to understand the problem. You have to define the problem. You have to consider as many options as possible, and you have to prototype it, and you have to test it with the user. So this is what you keep at the back of your mind when you're going through a product decision-making process, or the process to defining or designing solutions generally. I want to stop here and see if we can take any more questions before I go forward. No questions. All right. So leads us to the next step, and this is like my favorite part. So there is system thinking, and then there is design thinking. And I talked about design thinking a bit more here, but just to solidify that we understand what design thinking is, because I know that Leslie talked about it, and I kind of brushed over it right now a few minutes ago. What do you think design thinking is? And feel free to quote me back, Seth, because I want to get us through this as quickly as possible, but just a check-in to be sure that we understand what design thinking is. Okay.
It's a sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It's a design, I think it's one of the UX design theories or ways you just mentioned, or it has, I think it's a five-step design path where you have to empathize with the customer. I think that's to understand their pinpoints and their needs and everything. Then you move to, what's that? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Empathize, I think define the problem. Yeah, you empathize, you speak with them, define the problem, then you ideate, so you think of solutions, you produce a prototype, yeah, and then you test the prototype.
Okay, great. Okay, nice that you're able to summarize the entire process without me showing you what it looks like. So I guess that is yeah, okay for me to say, yeah, we generally understand how this should work, right? So if you're building a product, and you might want to ask yourself, wait, have I really defined this problem that we're solving on? Or I just heard about it and I dived right into building it, right? Or you can be asking yourself, do I really understand who the people we're designing for, who they are and what their actual needs are? And maybe go back to the empathize phase. Or maybe you're already being out your solutions, like, wait, did I consider other ways that we can do this, which is the ideation phase. And then the prototype phase, wait, have I tested this idea to make sure that it actually works for our users? So that's why this is like a five-step process, right? Because again, you can go from defining, from empathizing to prototyping and testing, but you need to be conscious of the fact that if you're skipping these other steps, then it's because maybe you have supporting data from XYZ place, or it's what you want to find out. So that's why the steps are there. So you have to keep in mind, is this the only way we can do this? Do I really know who we're talking about? Is this really one of the things that they're going through and stuff like that? So far, when we're talking about design thinking, we're talking about the users directly, and we're talking about designing a product that meets their needs. Now, where system thinking comes in is that it goes beyond the user, at this point, right? So design thinking has a more narrow concentration where we're only concerned about the need of the users and we're creating solutions, right? But system thinking is we're considering the entire business as we are trying to deliver a service for a customer. So for example, I think I like to use a delivery service. Now, if you were a UX designer for a delivery service, what you might be trying to do is think about, users want to order food on our app. How do we make it easy for users to order this food? So do you want them to log in first, or can they do this with the guest account and then you use their details at the end to create an account for them? Or should they log in by force? How do they go through the different restaurants? What's the process of adding to carts? If we're talking system thinking, we understand that there are several departments in play when we are building that experience for our users, right? There is where are users coming from? So there is their marketing team that is probably putting out ads and people going out on the streets directly to sign in users. So where are users coming from exactly, which will also determine what's the first thing you show to them. So a user that is coming from an ad, what do you do? Do you block them off and say you can't view this app until you sign in or you create your account, versus a user that already has an account versus a user that was referred? What do you do in those kind of situations, right? And then we also think about, well, when it comes to fulfilling a user order, how do you get in touch with the restaurant? What does it look like on the end of the restaurant that is receiving an order through your app, right? So you're considering what that will look like for the restaurant, how you can make it easy for the restaurants to receive that order and send the information back to the users. You're also considering the engineering team to understand what constraints exist when you're building a platform like that, right? So which is the most efficient way to get that process done. You're also thinking about, well, the user is adding to carts. So what does that look like? Do they go into individual restaurants to add to carts, or do you show them just like the dashboard of foods that they can choose? When you're doing payouts, you're thinking, okay, well, we're collecting money for these different restaurants, assuming a user is able to order from more than one restaurant. Like, how do you process payouts to these restaurants? How do you send information to the rider? Because they also have to receive that order. So system thinking goes beyond this small need that the user has, where you're really just honing in on, oh, I want to make an order. And you're expanding that to say, there are different departments that comes to play when a user wants to make an order, right? How do we streamline this entire process? Because then if there is a break where the rider cannot receive information about the user order, if riders can't receive the information, even though you've completed the experience of booking completely, that break can ruin the entire experience, which affects the brand, right? And then instead of saying, oh, this thing failed once, they'll not start saying this company is an idiot, they don't even know how to do anything. God forbid, we're not using Jumia. I mean, we're not using this food delivery company again, or where is this food delivery platform again, right? So you have to consider all of those things, because those things cohesively deliver the experience for the users, right? So as a UX designer, and this is not to say that you're doing anything wrong, I'm just saying that if you don't consider what that looks like, even though the process of placing an order was nice, if the user doesn't get the food, they're not going to be praising you that this app is nice to look at, or the experience of ordering this food was great, because what they really want is the food. It's not the app that looks fine or the process that looks easy that is the enticement for the user. It's by the time they get the food. And then another thing that matters to users is how long it takes for them to get the food. So as a designer, you can consider these things and try to make that process more streamlined and more straightforward, which means that you are collaborating with other departments beyond your product team to be able to deliver this experience for the user. So that's what system thinking is versus design thinking. Is that clear? Do we have questions at this point before I move forward? Let me know.
Hi, Evie. When it comes to the system thinking ish, does the designer have control over that? For example, the whole delivery stuff you talked about, if the delivery person who is in charge of delivering it decides to stop at one jungle and eat like half of the meat and like most of the rice, how can the designer stop or control that? So I don't know.
Okay, yeah, no, that is I mean, that is definitely something to consider as part of, system thinking, but it is not directly related to the user. It is related to the user experience, but it is not within the control of the designer. So situations that we can use to help users out when a driver has misbehaved is creating an easy way for users to report an issue that has occurred, to say, oh, okay, give us more information about what happened. And then another thing is then at that point, not stressing users to say, submit this form to tell us, and then having to take having to call back users, and then instead of collaborating with the customer support department to say this is the issue that the user. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have a problem with Jumia, and I am sending you an information from the app where I am logged in. You have access to what my previous order is. Okay, fine. You don't know which one has a problem, Abby. I'm entering the order number, and you are still asking me for details. Like, find out. Okay, find out. Don't be asking me to retell you about the order that I placed. Understand? Let's go into this discussion about what the problem is, or let me leave discussion about what the problem is. So what you can do to recover that kind of situation and turn the experience for the user is that if they've had that issue, you can make it an option to say, oh, you come into the app and you're like, you have a problem, right? And one of the issues in the drop down that you listed is that driver ate my food. Users know that you are aware of it and you want to help them if you have that option available, as against having to tell users to tell the story from beginning to end. So if they're telling the story, it might makes it seem like, they need to bring a lot of proof for you to understand that this is a problem or something that's happened before. So that's a way to take charge of that situation and to consider system thinking. So while you may not be able to impact the driver's behavior, you can use your design or your research insights to make that entire process of reporting this issue better for our users. Do you understand? So that way you can save face for the brand in some ways. Then it depends now on the customer support or the company if they agree to refund the users or whatnot. But if you're considering system thinking, then that's one of the scenarios that you will ideally be thinking about.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
All right. Do you have anything else on this before we move ahead? Nope. Okay. All right. We still have a couple more things to cover. Actually, we've not been going far today. All right. So the next thing that we are talking about is the different kinds of research, right? I mean, we know that the empathize phase is learning about our users. And we know we're supposed to conduct research, but what does research look like? So we have market research, we have user research, we have qualitative research, behavioral research, attitudinal research, quantitative research. Ideally, all of these are categories or determine these. And I will show you in the next slide, right? But let's just define it. So market research is you are understanding what the market is. Before you launch a product, you want to know if there's really a problem here, and then the number of people experiencing this problem, who are the people that are already in this space, how are they serving users, where can you do better, stuff like that. What we do is, when we say user research, is ideally you already have a product and you're trying to understand user behaviors, how they are interacting with your product, or in you can even be thinking about how they are interacting with other products, what are the things they like about those other products and the things they don't like about all those other products. That's what you would ideally be doing. That's majorly the research between research and market, majorly the difference, right? Research focuses on user behavior that directs how you're going to design the interface. Product helps you decide whether or not this is something you're going to launch to begin with, or who you're launching it for to begin with. So that's where pre-launch and post-launch. So pre-launch is before you launch your product, you do some market testing, you're defining your users and you're doing some market testing. So post-launch research is usually user research, right? Because you're doing that after the product is already in the market and you're learning from already existing data. Then we have quantitative research, which is, there is a problem here. Yeah, I switched up qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is actually research that can be computed. So it's about numbers, and qualitative is, you know what? I feel like, yeah, y'all have to give me a moment, man. Let me not come and teach you something that is not correct, you know. Yes, as the word implies, quantity in qualitative. Yes, it means, so it's research that can be computed, and it's stuff when you're looking like, look, how many people are experiencing these issues, or how many people how many people are experiencing these issues, or how many people are going through this process, or how many people are falling off at this process. So it's a numbers thing that you're quantifying, right? Qualitative is user behavior. What are users doing exactly? And then that's where behavioral and attitudinal comes in, because you also have sometimes the quantitative, the numbers is across what people say. So you're trying to find out how many people are saying this, or you're trying to find out how many people are doing this, right? So that's where attitudinal and behavioral comes in. And qualitative is how are people saying this, or where are people saying this? So behavioral is what are people currently doing exactly, how are people going through the application, right? How are they solving a current problem that they're experiencing? Attitudinal is what do people say or think or feel about a brand, right? So you want to hear people's opinions. So that's generally what this different types of research is. They're kind of intertwined in the sense that you can also be doing a qualitative user research or a qualitative market research, that kind of thing. So, oh yeah, this is just a very deep insight into the difference between market research and user research. So broad, you're not really going into what exactly users are going through. You just want to get an idea that it's a problem. When you're doing market research, is usually what people are saying about a product, saying about a brand. Behaviors is how exactly they're interacting with your product, again, because this is something that's already launched. So market research is quantitative. You're trying to find numbers. How many people are going through this problem? How many people are going through this process? Your samples are usually large, and you do things like surveys to get a wider target audience, which also leads to high representativity, right? So like the more people that you're sending out your surveys to, the more people and the more backgrounds that you're looking into, it informs marketing decisions to say what is the pricing that we're going to put on our product, or what are the features. Well, it also influence design decisions, but yeah, more like what are the pricing we're going to put on our product, and what kind of features are we going to build out to drive income for the business. And then you're looking at like what are people buying, and then in product is how people are using product, because again, user research is usually on a product that already exists or on a product that's about to be launched, but it's the product itself as against whether or not you're validating your business idea. All right, so this is the thing, categorizing all of that research practice. So essentially, this is what people do, which is all of these methods that is up here. What people say, which is all of this methods that is down here. And then you have qualitative, where you're talking to people directly. And then you have quantitative, where you just probably send out like, survey is the most popular quantitative measure here, because it's the one that deals with a lot of numbers. A/B testing also this with numbers. So how many people like this design versus how many people like this design, right? But for qualitative, which is the most popular way to get user data, because you're talking to them directly and you're able to read user behaviors, you're able to quote them when users say, this is exactly what my problem is. That's why there are like more methods that is leaning on this side of things, right? Okay, so we know what research is, we know how to do research, we know some of the categories of research. The next thing we're doing is, well, where do you start from? And my favorite answer to this question is it depends. It really does. What kind of product are you building? Where are you in the process? Who are your target audience? There is a lot of things to consider when you are starting out a product. So it depends. But one of the things that we really do is we start with product discovery. Does anybody want to again give us an insight to what product discovery is? Just tell us a bit. You know, what do you, when you hear product discovery, what comes to mind?
Okay, for me, I would say product discovering. What I want to say flat on my head. Let me come back.
All right, take your time, take your time. You can also type it in chat when you remember. Okay, anybody else wants to take a go at what product discovery is?
I would say it's maybe so two things that come to mind. One is either learning about the product, or two, it's like how to like introducing the product to the user. I don't know which, but yeah.
Okay, those are two good points. So I'm gonna put it out here so we know. Anybody else want to give? Anybody else want to go? You know, right or wrong answers. You just want to know what we think about when we hear these things.
Okay, I think I remember the little. What I
Yes.
wanted to say.
All right.
Okay, so I would say when I think of product discovering, I think what comes to my mind is what and why. In the sense that what's the product for? What is it all about? What is the benefit I'm going to get and all of that, and if I'm to buy into the idea, why? You know,
Okay.
for
And
me.
why should you care?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Also, very valid points. Anyone else before we move on to the textbook definition of product discovery? This is like one of my favorite parts when it comes to product design as well, doing product discovery. All right, let's move on then. So the textbook definition of product discovery is the process of closely understanding user problems, needs, and validating your ideas or solution before you start developing anything. So everything around, you know, you're getting more context. Somebody comes and says the problem is that the problem with Nigeria is that our politicians are stealing our money. Then you dive deeper. I said, like, really? How? Why did they steal the money? How exactly did they do this process of stealing? Do they really steal the money? Is that really the problem? Or the problem is that the other Nigerians are giving them the money for free, or you know, so discovery is learning more about the process, is understanding the context. And one key thing I would like to point out here is whenever you are giving problem or a product to work on, before going ahead to say you want to do UI design, you should spend some time on discovery and understanding context. Who are these people experiencing this issue. Somebody has said that this is the problem. You go further and say, yeah, let's clarify whether or not this is really a problem, right? So we can say how many people are experiencing this, at what point are they experiencing it, where did you hear that this exactly is a problem, who's your source, do you get? Or maybe users are finding difficulty, you can go and say, let's recreate this process, let's start again from all of these steps and see if whether or not this problem occurs in the way that people say it. So you should spend a good number of time understanding that this problem is a problem before you go ahead to ship it out to users, right? Because then you may have features that people don't need, or you may even come and compound the problem. You miss it entirely, and by that, nobody's using it, or you build in something that people are like, why did you take away this thing that we were using and you brought this one? We don't want this one, give us this one back. You know, so always do discovery and confirm that the problem that you're trying to solve is a problem. And again, just using the double diamond because it expands a bit more into that. So somebody has identified a challenge, everybody goes back and does like some research on their own to be sure that this thing that this person has talked about, it happens. We gather our own opinions, we come back together, and then we talk about what we've learned. So in that part, we're defining it to say, maybe this is not really the problem. This is what I figured out. Maybe this is what the problem is. And then it's also going to the process of saying, you know what, let's do a prototype and let's test it. So you do all of these things before you develop a feature, right? So you're saving development time, you're saving development resources, because it costs time and money to develop something, put it out in the market, and then realize that it's not what people are looking for. So you don't have to wait until which surprisingly is how most companies operate. Oga center design organizations, Oga will come and say, this is what have you seen what Elon Musk is doing? Elon Musk literally hears one user complain about something and then orders the entire development team to develop it. And then we all know what happens when that's, we're all testing the product with them. Exactly. So it is not as uncommon as the thing. It feels like common sense when you say, oh, we find a problem, let's go through this process of drilling. It feels like common sense, but it really isn't. Like, the reason why we're talking about this a lot and the reason why designers are struggling a lot is because even though we have all of these methods to tell us that this is what we should do, not everyone is aware of it to begin with. Secondly, people just prefer their gut feeling. Like, I feel strongly. I was sleeping yesterday and I heard in my dreams that this is the actual solution, and then people just go ahead and say, let's implement the solution, right? And then some people think some solutions and ideas sound really nice, right? They sound really nice. Some ideas sound really nice, but then by the time you build it, you're like, why is nobody using this thing? Because even though it is nice, you have a bias from being the one that is building this product. I can't tell you. I am so scared to launch a product without user input, because of the number of times I have learned during research that my assumption about what works for users versus what users are actually doing is not the same thing. Do you get? I'm gonna try and find, there's this image that comes to mind to explain this. Hold up, let me see. Oh yeah, that is exactly what it is. Okay, I found it, so I'm gonna share it with us in a moment. All right, so all right, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Right? You know that this makes sense for users. You do all of this mapping and it looks fine. like, and then people will rather walk on grass. Why? Because the essence of this is I want to get from point A to B fast. Okay, I don't care about your very beautiful tiled or terraced whatever ground that I have to work on. What I want to do is move from this point to this point, right? So sometimes we get very caught up doing this beautiful design, this beautiful interaction, this beautiful everything, and then our users are coming to do this on our app, and you're like, why didn't it work? Well, because again, sometimes what we think might work for users will not actually work for them. Users have humbled me a lot in this market. I can really not becoming myself smart because I really come up with all of these interactions and all of these things that I feel like will help users. And then you do small testing and users are looking at you like, right, this one is for yourself, you know? So always have to test your ideas. But yeah, we've talked a lot about, you know, research plans and everything. But then if there's one thing you must do before you start research is you create a plan. So another problem that we've seen or I've seen again is we give you a scenario and you're like, all right, I'm talking to users, but like, hold up. Before you go ahead to talk to users, what is your plan, right? Why are you doing this research? Right? Who are you going to be addressing or talking to? What is your current budget or resource? By resource, I'm talking about money, I'm talking about time, I'm talking about people on your team. I'm talking about what research methods are you going to use? Where exactly are your users? So you know if this is a moderated session or an unmoderated session. Is this a remote session? Is this contextual inquiry where you're there with the person? You need to figure all of this out before diving deep into the research, because then otherwise, how do you know when you've learned something? Another thing is like, what exactly do you even hope to learn from this research? So you know why you're doing it, but what do you want to learn? What is this information going to do for you? What's it going to inform? So before you dive into saying, yes, we need to talk to you, because you need a plan, something that's going to guide you, something that's going to align you and other parts of your team and other members of your team as well, because then you need to carry other people along. I can't tell you how many times I've done Matters research and everybody's like, wow, lovely presentation, Evie, and they just put my entire research and everything on one shelf and continue with the thing that we're doing. And essentially that happened because I did it all by myself and I wasn't involving other members of my team. Now, when I do, in fact, it is so in the process that even if it's not something we're implementing now, it's something that we keep referencing to say, oh yeah, remember this research that Evie did. This is what we found out. We should consider this when we're doing this or when we're doing that. Okay, so you do need to also involve your team members, and one of the ways to keep them updated and involved is to have a plan you can share with them to say, this is where we are around the ground, this is what we have achieved so far, and stuff like that. So today I just give us a general overview of what a research plan looks like. And from our next class next week, we will start our exercise where we're actually going through a mini project, right? So I will send you a template on how to frame the ideas that we're going to choose from next week. So what should your research plan contain? Can you people see this? Is it clear? I mean, background, objective,
Sorry,
research.
I have a question. I've been holding it in for a while
Oh
now.
no, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. So the product discovery, from all the definitions we've been having, they just all like seem alike. So is product discovery now the same thing as design thinking? Because you're, I don't know, you're kind of saying the same thing, you know, like define a problem, you know.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. You just have different names. So if I'm saying product discovery, I can mean w- design thinking, or I can mean double diamond step or something.
Okay, so the way to do product discovery is through the design thinking method or double diamond. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yes. So the reason why it's product discovery is before you launch a product, right? That phase where you're doing all this pre-launch research, understanding the market, that is your product discovery phase. You're learning more about the product. You're learning more about the research. So that's the product discovery phase. So you do that before you launch a feature. And then if you also want to launch another new feature, whether or not it's for an existing product or you want to launch a new product, again, you also have to do a discovery process where you expand on what the problem is. So every time you're trying to deep dive into a product, a problem that you've understood, or an opportunity space, you are doing discovery. And the essence of that is do research before we build. Again, you will not believe the number of times that people just go straight ahead to building a product without doing a discovery to understand the market, to understand the context, to understand the users. So everything you're doing in that phase where you're trying to understand and learn about the users is your discovery process. And you
so
can
essentially it is a subset of of design thinking, like it's part of
yeah,
the
it is
design
more,
process.
yes, is a subset of the UX design process, and it is also a subset of the product design life cycle.
Okay.
Right. So when you're building a product, you have to do discovery, you do development, when you do discovery and development and the product's in the market, you're getting feedback and insight from users, and you can be testing on the go or making updates or doing research on the go. But at that point, it's not necessarily discovery unless there is this new feature you want to launch. Right. And then you go through this entire process again. So half the time when a product has already launched and we're doing discovery, it is on a new opportunity that we're trying to figure out, or there's this really huge pain. And we're trying to learn more about it before going ahead to develop a solution to solve that problem. So that entire phase is product discovery. So yes, it's a part of the UX design process actually, where you do discovery and then you go ahead and build a product. Is that clear?
Thank you. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So we're talking about the plan that we need in order to get started, right? So, I mean, the first things first is understand the reason why this research document exists is to help you track your activities, is to help you define and clarify what it is that you're going to do. So by the time you're asking yourself questions, you're knowing a bit more about why this research should be done, what you expect to come out of it. It's also a document you can share to keep people aligned, maybe your stakeholders, your team members, and other people around. So when you're doing that in mind, one of the things you obviously have to do is start by creating the background. Why does this problem exist? Where does the problem come from? Or what are you trying to solve? You can also give information about whether or not you've done some research products or research before, or you've done some literature review, or there's been a previous research that you're referencing so give people a background, an overview to understand why you're doing this research, what the motivation is, right? And then the next thing you do is obviously you now tell people, okay, this is the outcome that we're thinking, this is what we're hoping to achieve, right? And here's how we can track it, right? So one of the things, or this is what we're trying to improve, and here's how we can track that we're improving this process. And then you can also define the success criteria of the research. So how do we know that this research is successful, right? Is it based on the information we learn about users? Is it based on the behavior we learn about users? And then what are you going to use your insight for, right? So you have to put that somewhere again so that when somebody else is reading it, they have an understanding of what happened in this entire research project. Another thing that you have to put in your research plan is the methods that you're planning to use, right? So how are you going to go about this research? Are you going to do a literature review? Are you going to do heuristics evaluation? Are you going to do competition analysis? Are you going to review analytics, like what users are currently doing on the app? How exactly are you going to do that? And then, so there is primary and secondary research, right? Secondary research is you're reviewing things that already exist. Primary research is that you're talking to users directly and you're getting new information from them, right? And then you can also include information like scope and focus area. So where exactly are we going to be focused on for the purpose of this research? Maybe this problem is large and we're going to start at this point. We're taking this chunk and we're going to start here. And this might inform other research going forward. So it might tell us what the next step is, what other research that we're going to do along this process, you can also include that. Another thing to include is the profile of your participants. Who are the people that you are going to talk to? Where are you going to find them? How are you going to recruit them for this research process? If it's an interview, you probably have a screener question. So you want to ideally get users that are going through the issue you've identified or that might be encountering the problem. So your screener questions help you get users that are more relevant to the issue. So if you have that, put the link there, and then you can have a session for resources. So any other thing that you referenced, maybe during the secondary research phase, or the link to the profile of the candidate and stuff like that. So again, when someone looks at your research plan, they should have an idea of what exactly you were researching about, why you're researching about it, what the outcome of that research should be, who you talked to, what methods you used, and stuff like that. So that's the essence of doing that. So by the time you've done that, then you can now say, all right, this is where we're starting from with our research. So starting from next week, we will go through this process. I think I'm going to kick off next week class with how to choose the right research method, because that's a question I keep getting asked. And I moved from it depends to how exactly. I could either teach that in class, or I will send a link to an article that I've already written about it. I will decide later today which is going to happen, but I will have us do an in-class exercise next week where we will categorize some research methods. So I'm going to give us a link to some popular research methods and deliverables, and we're going to spend a couple minutes in class classifying those. So your being able to participate depends on whether or not you read the article, right? And I strongly advise that you do, because, well, it is your assignment. So I don't have to give any other reason. But yes, I strongly advise that you do. So all of this I am going to send, if not today, by the end of tomorrow, so you can have the week to read that and start preparing for class. Do we have any questions? This is where we end today.
Yeah, I have one question.
Okay, shoot.
Okay. So sorry, it's just a lot of terms, so they're just scattering in my head. So this research plan is after we've already defined, like after we know that, okay, we've defined a problem, right? So we're now researching, like, to understand how users will interact with our product, or is this before we even define a problem? Like, this is just the beginning.
No, so let's just go back to look at what the components of the research plan is, so we can walk you through it. So one of the things we're asking for here is your background, and the background includes what the problem is, right? And how you decided that this is something that we should look into further. So ideally, when you found that, oh, users are dropping off at XYZ points, right? And you're like, why are they doing that? You're like, all right, we should probably conduct research to find out why users are dropping off. Is that clear?
Okay, it is. So we basically we already have a problem at hand, and we're now conducting research to. Okay, all right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So before you go into doing all of that research, that is important. You should take some time to note down all of those things so that you can come back to it and review to say, oh, this is where we. Another thing that you should include that's not here is your assumptions. So maybe you already have an assumption to say this is why users are doing it. I highly recommend writing down your assumptions, because by the time you finish the research process, sometimes you're able to tell that immediately that, oh, I was wrong about this. This is actually why users are behaving in this way, and it's not what I thought. Or I was right about this, and this is exactly how users are behaving. So that helps you build your product sense, and you get to a point where sometimes you can rely on your gut feeling, because you've learned from users exactly how they react in XYZ situations. And you know that because you can compare before and after.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions, comments before we wrap up today? No? Cool. All right, folks. That's it for today. Elsie, do you want to paste the link to the attendance? So they can fill out the attendance for today. Okay, Blessing, go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. So I would
Hi,
like to
Blessing.
know
I can slightly hear you.
Okay.
I can slightly hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Still very faint. Oh boy. Try again. Let's see. Oh yeah, perfect. I can hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to know if your slides will be available after the class.
Yes, it should be actually. And in last week's slide, I should also have that and send that over to. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for reminding me.
All right, thank you so much.
Cool. Well, if Elsie isn't here, I don't have the link to your attendance for today, but if she's not here, she's gonna paste it in the Slack channel so y'all can.
I think the attendance list. Just hold on. Let me.
Okay.
1 minute. I should be able to get that for you.
Oh, and Leslie, feel free to end the class when you're done. I have to rush right now.
Oh, sure.
Hi, everybody. See you next week.